This is Andre reporting live from DK Jungle with a special report as the locals have reported sightings of a brand new type of monkey. Luckily, we don't have to take them only at their word as it provided us with photographic evidence of the monkey in question. So let's bring it up for you to see for yourself right now. Wait a second, that's not a new monkey, that's just Diddy Kong with his old pal DK, sporting a slightly new look. Hey everyone, Andre here. So as you probably know by now, if not only in this video, Diddy Kong recently got a new render from Nintendo that updates his look a little bit, and I thought it'd be fun for us to go even more in depth than we did before to show and compare some of the changes that we noticed after making that original video. Because at first, it doesn't look like all that much has changed, which is still true to a degree, but looking closer, I was surprised by how much really has changed. Specifically, at least 10 things I want to point out that I noticed between this new design and the old one. So to show off these changes in further detail, let's go and swap over to my canvas view here, totally not Photoshop or anything, and I want to show off these characters side by side. So first of all, let's bring up the old render, which you can I say old, but you can still find it on a variety of websites, including the Japanese website, I'm probably sure the American one, pretty much everywhere, because the new design is only being used so far on the Switch news page. Anyways, again, we can see that they are very similar. In fact, the new design is using the exact same pose as the old one, or I say exact, but a few things have changed about it. But it's very similar looking overall. But upon a closer glance, of course, we're going to know some changes here. So to do that, let's go and center the screen real quick. Let's go and get rid of the new design on the left here, and not that one. And let's go ahead and layer the new design directly on top of the old one. So again, we're looking at the old one right now, and that is the new one. Now let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit too on this. There we go, perfect. Alright, so I want to cover this in three main segments. We got the body, the face, and the clothing. Let's go over the body first, and right away we can see that the fur has changed. I don't know if it's necessarily fluffier in the new design compared to the old one right here, but it does look brighter and overall a little bit more inviting, which is something I'd say about his overall design in general, and I really do like the look of it. But by the way, before we get too deep into this, I do want to point out that even the modern creator of Diddy and Donkey Kong's modern design, less so these days, Kevin Bayless, who, used to work at Rare and created the original models of Donkey Kong Country, even he approves of these new looks, saying, "Thank you, Nintendo, for improving your Diddy Kong character and being sympathetic towards my original design. They both look better than ever. I can rest in peace." So I love that's a cute accolade from the creator of the modern interpretations of Donkey Kong, and of course the only original design of Diddy, as he helped create that original character. So that's fun to see. So again, that kind of lends to the even friendlier, warmer look that Diddy has now. Beyond that, we can see that his belly looks a little different now. Let's go ahead and show off the old belly. There it is, and the new one. It looks a little bit bigger, doesn't it? It could be a function of the lighting, but I think it actually may be a little rounder now. In addition, you can see there's some more fur beneath it as well. It could be how he's posed, but I think it lends him just an overall better look in that there's now like a clearer fur outline rather than his skin turning into like empty space. So I quite like that myself. Next up is I want to touch on, unfortunately, for better or worse, we're going to focus on his feet. I know it's the internet, you can't talk about feet without things getting weird. In any case, there is actually a significant change when it comes to his feet, because if you look at his old design, which is based on the original, DKC models, they are very bulbous. Look at those giant toes. I hate saying this stuff. But if you look at the new ones, they're actually almost more finger-like, which you would expect from a monkey, because they can use their toes as, fingers, as like grasping limbs or tools, I guess, if you will. So I quite like that update, but furthermore, he also has toenails now too, whereas they were flat before. Now, this is not the first time we've seen a Donkey Kong render having toenails, however, because the Smash Ultimate design also had them. And let me go zoom out here for this. We can get away from the whole feet thing too. But yeah, so I think so far, as we're going to see as we go through this, the newer design seems to be like a combination of a variety of designs we've seen for Diddy over the years. So yeah, let's go and get rid of that. Let's move on from the feet thing now, because something else I want to point out is that it seems like his tail may be a little bit shorter now. It's hard to tell. Let me get rid of the old design for a sec. There you go. You can see the old design, or I'm sorry, the new design with the old design behind it. You can see the tail actually extends quite a bit farther than the new design. Now, it could be posing. It could be just manipulate the tail differently. But in this pose, at least, the tail looks a little bit shorter, which I find kind of interesting. Beyond that, that actually is pretty much it for the body. So let's go move on to the face. And this is where we're going to see some really kind of, I think, interesting changes here. So first up, if we look at his mouth, There's actually a few things to note, and that's it. He actually has teeth now. He has almost never had teeth before in the entire history of his design, at least when it comes to the renders. I'm pretty sure in-game too. To better showcase this, here's a gallery of Diddy images or Diddy renders over the years, and as you can see, almost none of them have teeth at all. The only exception I could find is the weird DS remake of Diddy Kong Racing, which did indeed have teeth, and they look extremely creepy. Luckily, in the newer render, that really isn't the case. They actually look much more natural. So I'm not too upset about this change because I think it looks fine. So again, teeth, no teeth, teeth again. Something else you might have noticed is that his tongue is now much redder and a little bit more reflective, I guess, or at least the lighting looks better on it. Looked really flat before, but now it looks really vibrant, which, you know, hey, it matches his clothing. Furthermore, though, is that his mouth is a lot less square now. So so in the previous design, his mouth is a little bit squarish, whereas now it's a little bit more rounder, and it even includes the curves in his cheek there. So again, the old design and the new one. It looks a little bit rounder overall, especially in that front jaw, which again, I think just lends it a little bit friendlier of a look. Beyond this though, if we look at his nose, look up there at his nostrils, they're actually a little bit, it looks like he's got like a slight nose job or something, but oddly in the opposite direction what you'd expect, where it's now a little bit bumpier than usual. So it's a little bit raised. In fact, we can actually zoom in here and you can better see it. So again, this is the new design and the old design, where it was pretty flat, and the new one is a little bit raised. It actually reminds me a little bit of what they did to Donkey Kong in the Tropical Freeze Switch version, which they ended up backing away from outside of that game, so a little strange. In addition to that, his ears got a massive shrinkage. Look at this. Look how small his ears are compared to before. Those are huge. They extend beyond, almost beyond like his cap line, whereas now they only barely touch it, if even that. So again, there's the old design and the new one. So yeah, I actually think I think the smaller ears look a little bit better, a little bit more in line or balanced with the rest of his face. Some people may disagree, but I actually quite like how that looks. Now speaking of his face, because we haven't left that topic yet, there is something else that changed quite a bit, or maybe not a lot, but to a degree, depending on how you look at this. Some people might think it's a lot, although it's a little bit subjective. And that is how his eyes also look a little bit rounder and a little bit friendlier. Look at this. They look a little bit more stretched out here, whereas here they're a little bit more oval-like, a little bit more balanced again, I'd say. Though there is something else that's different about them. And also, the cap shadow no longer covers them as well, whereas they did before. I think it looks a little bit cleaner. But if you look closely at the middle of his eyes, you may notice like it almost looks like there's a little patch of skin going between them, almost like they're two separate eyes. And that actually isn't the first time we've seen this. And you know where we've seen this before is actually in the Mario movie. Right here, let me bring the design right over, and you can see right there very clearly a strip of skin or fur between his eyes. And actually, I myself am a fan of this. I don't know if everyone is. I know some people prefer the mono eye look, and again, it could be a weird artifact of this render, so I'm not 100% sure if that actually is the case given how thin it is. But even if it is there, it's so thin, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it's actually a really good balance between the two, in my opinion. Now, that's not the only movie thing going on here, but we'll get more to that in a second. To do so, actually, we need to move into the clothing section, or final section of the changes to this design. And that starts with his shirt itself, which is partially the only clothing he's wearing. Because if you look at his old design, the stars are a lot bigger compared to the new one. The stars have been shrunk and de-emphasized compared to the old one. And again, maybe just for better balancing reasons. I don't have a preference really, but I don't mind the new look. So I thought that was interesting. Furthermore, if you look at the bottom of the shirt, it looks like there's a more pronounced, like, I don't know what you would call it, like the area where it's threaded, or the folded section almost, like right down here, as compared to the previous design, which again, I'll show off there, where it's a lot more subtle. But conversely, if you look at Diddy's shoulders here, that line there is much more pronounced than on the new one, where it's a lot more subtle. So just an interesting balance or change there that almost seems like the inverse of what was happening before. Moving on, though, is the biggest difference, perhaps, when it comes to his design, and perhaps most, in terms of clothing, and perhaps the most controversial one, and that is his hat, because it looks like it no longer has the Nintendo logo on it. Again, here's the old design, here's a new one. Now, it is a little bit hard to say for sure from the angle, because this angle seems to be a little bit different, where we could see it really pronounced before, but it also could just be that it is just gone, and I personally think it probably is, especially because there is something new that would replace it here, being that pin at the top, which, let me zoom in here just in case you don't see it. Right there, that giant pin, which was not there in the original design. that wasn't there at all. In fact, that is something that takes another cue from the Mario movie, because if you bring up the Mario movie design, right here, there it is. There is that pin. We can actually better see what it is here, being the initials for Diddy Kong, being I guess DD or Diddy, I guess. So yeah, that clearly spells DD, much like the power-up bracelet from Super Nintendo World, which you can see right here. So let's go back to the original design, and let's go ahead and compare it to, sorry, the new design, compare it to the old one. And again, you can see how that pin kind of like adds a new flair to his hat. And if we go back to the Mario movie design one more time, it reinforces why I think Nintendo is missing, because it is also missing from the Mario movie. There is no Nintendo on the cap, which might explain why they added the Diddy pin. It added a little bit more flair, because it wouldn't have made sense for Diddy to have a Nintendo hat in a movie that is based on, you know, that it would break the fourth wall too much. Now I know there are other fourth wall breaking things in the game, but having Diddy's hat actually being manufactured by Nintendo would be a little weird considering it also exists in Nintendo's in Mario's real world universe in New York. So yeah, I thought these were all some interesting changes here, everyone. Those are the 10 major differences I noticed. There's probably a little bit more. You know, I think there may have been some tweaks to his like limb shapes slightly and a few other things, but overall I have to say I'm actually a really big fan of these changes. I think it is a little bit friendlier, a little bit more inviting, a little bit more modern, and it does a great job of respecting the original design too. And I really love how it does seem to be bringing together all these designs, whether it's elements from the Smash Ultimate design or elements from the Mario movie, which makes sense for why they would revisit, you know, Diddy's design in general, including possibly bringing in elements of the two separated eyes while still making it look like a mono eye. I'm a big fan of this, and even his feet, you know, again, it gets weird, but I think even his feet looks more balanced now, more realistic, I suppose, which isn't necessarily the overall design they're going for, but it just looks overall better. Also, I just realized I have Diddy transparent here for some reason, so ignore that slight transparency. But there we go, everyone. I don't want to ramble on too long. I just am a really big fan of this new render, but I was a big fan of the original design too. And also, again, makes me wonder if we'll see this design rolled out into the games, maybe in Donkey Kong Bonanza, perhaps. So with that, everyone, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these specific changes. What do you think of the new pin in the hat, the lack of the Nintendo logo, the rounder, maybe more friendlier design, the fur changes, the facial shape differences, the tongue being redder. I would love to hear all your thoughts in the comments below. With that, if you enjoyed this video, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Diddy, Donkey Kong, and the rest of the gang, and everything else here on GameXplain. Thanks for watching, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll catch you later. Bye.